All right, welcome back. Let me see if I can get that. It's a little bit dark, isn't it? I am going to decline that phone call. Okay, so it's time for doing some drawing in dark transparent color. Transparent, the fact that it's transparent and dark, of course, if you follow me, that those two terms are almost synonymous. If it's dark, it is transparent. If it's light, it's opaque. Ne'er the twain shall meet. It's amazing to me how many people in our generation don't understand that. And it is a thing. It's the magic of painting that was largely obscured and lost in the 20th century. But I was just looking this morning, as a matter of fact, it's online, at some paintings by Frans Hals, Dutch, 1700s maybe. I can't remember, 16 or 17. A little bit after Rembrandt, and those guys, those old masters, they knew the meaning of transparency. They knew that's why their paintings glow the way they do. And many of our contemporary paintings don't have the same glow. It's because we've lost the understanding of transparent painting. Okay, I'm redrawing this this magazine rack for the third time maybe. I first had it up there, now I moved it down here. And you might ask yourself, so what are you going to do about that erroneous line? The answer is nothing, at least not now. In the last stage, or the last two stages of the painting, which involve opaque, thicker paints, I might do something about it then. But even then, I won't do it mindlessly. Many times, those erroneous marks like that, if you keep an open mind, if you paint with your eyes instead of with your grumpy head, and I don't mean your head is always grumpy, but if your head does get grumpy, stop painting. Paint with your eyes. You may realize that those marks that you thought were mistakes actually end up serving you quite well. So you don't just start wiping stuff out because you thought, quote unquote, it was a mistake. It might not have been a mistake at all. It might turn into something else. Okay, we're going to have a man sit. There is actually a man sitting on the bench right now. Let's put him in there. So the colors I have on my brush right now is dark, dirty blue. I don't want a lot of color at this stage, and I'm always second guessing that fact. Maybe I should be wanting color, and I just am not smart enough to know it. That's a very real possibility. But most of the time, at this stage, I don't want a lot of color. I want a lot of color at many of the other stages. At the moment, I'm sort of using my brushes like a glorified pencil, if that makes sense to you. So this bench has a checkerboard grid pattern in it, and I'm trying to reflect that right now. You'll notice I'm not being very exact. My checkerboard is slightly off, cattywampus, to use a Texas term, cattywampus. That's actually on purpose. I don't want the details of my underpainting drawing to be accurate. If they're accurate, I will end up with a stiff painting. That's just the easiest way to put it. I'm going to get a little bit of Gamsol on my brushes so I can do some fast, branchy kind of lines here. A little bit more of that stuff. Generally speaking, you don't use your paint thinner or turpenoid or Gamsol or whatever it is. You don't use it as a medium generally. But every once in a while, that rule can be broken. And I break it when I want to do fast, fluid lines like that, because it'll help the paint flow off the... Okay, so why don't you want to use terpenoid or Gamsol as a medium? The reason is it breaks down the binding agents of your paint. In other words, after it dries, it can be wiped off if you use too much of that kind of stuff, the terpenoid or the paint thinner. It can be wiped off with a thumb. It turns your paint into chalk, if you will. Slight exaggeration, get the point. So you don't want to use too much of it, but I think I'm in the safe zone. I'm not doing too much area. I'm gonna do it again though. So yeah, stuff that I do like this is at risk of rubbing off in the later stages of the painting process. Does that make sense? I am looking at the tree down there. Let me give you a quick view of the scene that I'm painting again. There it is, and let me zoom in to roughly, I'm painting a scene roughly like that, but not with this lighting. You remember we've talked about this quite a bit already this morning. The light that was here at about 11:15, about 2 hours ago, was gorgeous, and it's a light here in the background and shade. Everything in here, up here, is in the shade, in shadow. Now, another thing I'd like you to notice about this approach to painting, again, I am death on blocking in a painting. If you're as good a drawer as Kevin McPherson, then go ahead and block your little heart out. But most of us are not as good as Kevin McPherson. And the problem with blocking in my opinion, is if you block in, you lock in, I say. If you block in, you're too likely to lock yourself in to your blocks. So I say don't block in, blob in a painting. That is, keep it loose and messy. Loose and messy, loose and messy. Each layer of the painting process, in my approach to painting, each phase, each stage of the painting process becomes slightly, at my vanishing point right about there, each paint phase becomes slightly more representational, slightly tighter, slightly more realistic. Did I use the word slightly enough times in that sentence? Okay. So I start out very loose, blobbing, and little by little get the lines in the right place, little by little. The amateur temptation, the student tendency is to want to, what I call, rush to judgment. Make too many firm decisions early on, and then stick by them. You know, it's always struck me as funny that good painters, good drawers, I'll put myself in the pretty good category. I'm pretty good at drawing. I put down marks and I don't believe them. I don't trust them. I don't put my weight on them. I don't trust that they are correct. I just put them down. And people who are maybe not quite so good at drawing, they do just the opposite. They put down marks and then they say, "Here I will stand. I can do no other. I will die on this hill." I'm being a tad bit dramatic, just for fun, as you are probably used to by now. You saw me scratching just a minute ago. In fact, one of the reasons I like these chip brushes is because their handles are, I like both ends of the brush. The handles are really good for scratching. Still a gorgeous day out here. You know what? I am doing this the hard way. Hang on a second. Let me show you a trick. I'll put this brush down for a minute. I have these nice long-handled brushes here I love. These are my second favorite kind of brushes. My most favorite being the chip brushes, cheap chip brushes. Don't know why they're called that. I saw somewhere was guessing that it was because they were used to brush chips off machinery. Huh. Sounds a little far-fetched to me, but I don't have a better one. Anyway, they're my favorite brushes. They're ridiculously cheap, which is kind of nice if it's going to be your favorite brush. And my second favorite are these. and I used to get them at Jerry's Artorama. I think they still sell them online, but they don't sell them in the store anymore, at least my store. Anyway, it's, let me tell you the name of it. Somebody will be asking. Made by Creative Mark. Jewel Plein Air. Jewel Plein Air, made by Creative Mark. So with all that information, you should be able to Google that and see if you can find these brushes available to you. Now, why are these? I didn't explain. I said, I have a vanishing point. It's drawn right there. And these long brushes are wonderful for getting perspective right, because I can use the handle. Like the edge of that building goes right there. I know exactly where it goes because I have a physical vanishing point drawn on the canvas. And these long brushes reach far enough. You can do the same thing with shorter brushes, just not quite as accurate. So I'm using a really nice cheater method here. So by the time I get to this stage, this phase of the painting process, I've already drawn things in here. Now, I may have drawn them erroneously, as I mentioned here, but I've already drawn everything here about 3 times. So this is, if you will, this is my fourth attempt to draw. And that helps a lot, because I use all my previous erroneous attempts as correctives. I can look at where I put the line the last time and go, oh, no, I don't want to do that there. I want to move it over, move it up, left, right, center, to 1/4 of an inch or something like that. Oops, let me double check that. Yeah. Sorry. Got my perspective going just a little cattywampus. Again, that wonderful Texas word. At least that's where I learned it. Okay, there are distant buildings back here, but this is going to be one of those paintings where it's not about the sharp, crisp outline of the buildings. It's not about that. So I'm going to leave the edges of these buildings very abstract. Right about now, I perceive many of you would be getting bored with this broadcast. I don't blame you. A little bit monotonous. Real painting is not done in 27 minutes like Bob Ross. Don't get me wrong, I liked Bob Ross just as much as anybody. I really did. What a great shtick. But was he doing real art, real paintings? Not really. And again, I like him a lot. If you're a painter, you want to learn all his brush tricks because they should be part of your repertoire, but you don't want to use them the way he did. Okay, that's a lecture for another day. I've given it before. I'm not going to repeat it today. The scratching technique, by the way, works particularly well if you've put a heavy enough glaze, oil glaze, that the last stage when I did the glaze, I made it fairly heavy, and then the scratching has some effect. If you didn't put thick enough glaze on, the scratching doesn't really show up very much. So sometimes it really does pay to give it a nice, fairly heavy layer of color. Let's get some of these figures darkened in here. I don't know how many people are actually going to be there. You really have to watch out that you don't have people on parade, even spaced. So 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's all right. I think I'm all right. I don't think I'm falling into that trap at the moment. I felt like the awnings that go down the street here were a real key element in the scene that I'm looking at. Paint around the edge of the canvas. If you paint the sides of the canvas on a thick stretcher, then you don't have to frame it, which I'm huge about not paying for frames. All right, actually getting down to some detail here. Okay, this is a good place for me to take a little break. I'll be back in a little while. Thanks so much for a while. Oh, let me see if there's any comments. Hey, Heather. Let me back up. Okay, well, a lot of comments. Josue Diaz, hello yourself. Wow, I love this dance. Stunningly beautiful colors. Thank you, horror fan. I think this will be lovely. Thank you, BJ. I hope so. Hope you're going to put the Christmas wreaths in. Oh, you know what? Horror fan 24. You know what? I decided, and I could change my mind, but I decided not to put the wreaths in because it makes it harder to sell, believe it or not. I love the wreaths. Okay, you give me pause. I might. I'll have to reconsider that. Hello again, Heather. Good to see you. I said slightly, just slightly too much. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, BJ. Love the lights and color. We aren't bored. Good. Glad to hear it, Heather. Appreciate that. But I'm going to take a little break here, and I'll be back in just a few minutes. Thanks so much for watching.